So when Lou asked me to do a presentation on the traffic system, it was easy to say yes, because from the very beginning when I got my license, I was greeted by a radiogram. So I know many of you have seen these. If you've never seen one of these or had the joy of getting one of these in the mail, it's a handwritten message that's been relayed over amateur radio and then delivered to you by a traffic handler through the postal mail. And this one was greetings by amateur radio, congratulations on my new license, and with a little message, and it was from someone in California. And this was really a watershed moment in my pretty young ham career. I wanted to know everything about this. When I opened it, I needed to know everything about this. And so it's really shaped the direction of my ham journey or career. And so I want to share with you a little bit about the traffic system, some of the things I've learned about it. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll sort of switch from me talking, and hopefully we'll do a little work where I have some radiograms, and if you're interested, you could write one out, and I'll explain to you how you could send it, or if you want me to send it, I'll be happy to as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit. All right. So this is the beginning. The beginning for me was this radiogram. All right. Now, getting into the national traffic system and getting into traffic handling is a long process, and unfortunately, there's not really like a great how-to manual. There is a manual. It's like 500 pages long, and it's really kind of difficult, and it's written for people who already know about traffic handling. So it's kind of challenging. To be honest with you, it's kind of challenging to get into traffic handling. And again, traffic handling, when we say traffic, we're talking about messages. All right, we're handling messages back and forth. And this is a visual that I got off Wikipedia that I think is nicely simplistic, and it shows the progression of how a message would travel through the system, going from the originator, which I'll talk about in a minute, all the way to the recipient. I learned about this through trial and error, to be honest with you. There's a few people who have helped me out through the way, but it's mostly just listening, right? Finding the nets, listening. You can pretty easily pick up the people who have experience and just trying to emulate, and I could ask them a few questions here and there. We're really lucky here in the Hudson Valley because we have some really good local training nets, which we can all access through VHF. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But so this is the current pathway that a message would go through. So it has it originating in Wisconsin. And you see it would go into a local net, and then a section net, which is an organization of all the different local nets. And then the section nets are organizations in a regional net. And then an area net covers a really big area. There's like 3 or 4 of those. And then the wide area nets is just basically a main conduit that goes across the country. All right. If you're just getting started, local nets are the place to start. Section nets, region nets, area nets, and the wider area nets, those ones are pretty much kind of invite only. So local nets are a good place to start. Now this is our sort of modern iteration. The system started after World War II as an emergency backup in case there was an emergency, right? How would a message get across the country, kind of tying in with the public service aspect of our hobby? How could amateurs leverage their expertise and their equipment to help out in a national emergency. What ended up happening was the system really relied on these things called trunk lines, which were basically just only a handful of operators. And those operators would be burdened with hundreds or even thousands of messages, which some of them relished, but other people would burn out quickly. So it was kind of not a sustainable model, especially into the 60s and 70s before, well, when long distance phone calls were pricey, right? So the national traffic system served as a really convenient way for people to send messages at no cost. So it was really popular. Some of the area and region nets, there's stories of them having 200, 300, 400 messages to handle on in a night, right? So they were really, really, really busy. So there's been a resurgence of the national traffic system probably in the last 5 or 10 years. There's been a lot more interest in really maintaining it and bringing in some other of the newer modes and newer people as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But my presentation is really designed, if you have some experience with traffic handling, great. If it's totally new to you, also great, but I'm kind of giving you an entry-level view to it and then giving you some ideas of how you could participate if you were interested. All right?
I thought I mentioned when I did in the 60s.
Please do.
AM, we did without repeaters, the Nourish LCD I did from White Plains area. We would have the yellow pad through the message like you do today.
Yeah.
We called people.
Yeah.
If we had a phone number, we'd call through the message,
Right.
like you said, because long distance was still expensive.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So you were one of the things you were doing was the delivering station. That's the operator who handles the last mile to the intended recipient. So these days, unfortunately, phone calls are becoming a lot rarer. People don't like to have their phone number out. They don't pick up the phone unless they know the number, things like that. So unfortunately, those are definitely getting rarer. We'll deliver messages by email, or I still do postal mail because of the first slide. I think it's special to get something in the mail. But these are some of the types of participants, right? So the originating station is the amateur operator who takes the message for either another ham or a person in the public and formats it and puts it on the air. The addressee is who the message is for, and a relay station are the operators along the way who will handle the message. And it could be one, it could be 2 or 3 relay stations along the way. On a traffic net, you've got some different roles, all right? And I think it's important to understand the roles if you're interested in doing more than just listening. You've got the boss station, that's the net control station. They're managing all the call-ins, they're managing the traffic, they're preparing a report for the net manager. That's the person behind the scenes who oversees the functions of the net. You have liaison stations. The liaison stations will take messages from whatever net it is and go either up or down and deliver. So they're going to be moving the messages through the system. They could also be traffic stations, or a traffic station could be independent of a liaison station. But a traffic station is the station who's bringing a message. So later today, you're gonna write out a message. So if you joined a traffic net, you would be a traffic station because you would have some traffic. And then check-ins, these are regulars who are just checking in. So, say we live in all different towns in the region, we're gonna check in, and if the net has any traffic for our town, we'll stay. If the net doesn't have any messages for our town, we'll be excused, sort of. So checking in is important even when you don't have traffic. The other thing I would mention is if you're just getting into traffic handling, make sure that you have blocked out what you have learned is an appropriate time to stay in the net. So for example, the Hudson Valley net, which is one that I'm going to talk about that I see some people nodding, you've heard before, is about a half an hour. So you want to make sure you have about a half an hour, because it's considered a poor practice to check into a net and then leave without telling the net control station. Like, of course, if you have something come up, but you have to tell them that you're going to leave, right? That's considered kind of like bad form. So here's just a couple different types of nets. So the phone nets are a great place to start for people who are new to traffic. Again, I'm going to give you the particulars in a minute, but there's VHF phone nets and then HF phone nets. So there's some pretty good lists online of places you can find the nets. So they're a little bit different than talk nets in that they have traffic, formal traffic passed back and forth. So, like there's, the Hudson Valley 80-meter net is a check-in net, right? They don't necessarily have traffic on it, or a roundtable net, or, a weekly repeater net for a club. Those are slightly different. These are in place specifically to handle formal written traffic back and forth. Once you get up the nerve to join, you want to make sure you're speaking slowly, and it's amazing how slow you really should speak when you're passing a message. It's good practice to like write out letter by letter and actually read it that slowly. All right. The phonetic alphabet is used a lot, so you want to make sure that you have a good handle on that. I thought the numbers are kind of interesting. Those are some pronunciations that help. But if you're going to join a net, you want to make sure ahead of time that you could reach the net properly, so that they're not spending time saying, "Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you," because these nets are kind of on a tight time frame. The beginning slide I showed you with the different hierarchy of the nets. Each net is going to be like 15 minutes or a half an hour after it, so that if I get some traffic at a local net, I'll go to the next one up and I'll be able to pass that message off. So they kind of all fit together. So you want to make sure that you're being efficient with the time. But phone nets are a great place to start. CW nets are great. This is my favorite type of net to join, but you do need to have some proficiency with CW. And the thing I wanted to point out is how interesting the connection is between the Q signals that we see all the time, QRT, QST, QRV, all, QSY, all these Q signals that are common in amateur radio have their origins here in the Q signals from CW nets. I kind of should have maybe led off with this, but if you think of ARRL, the second R is relay, right? So it's like handling the messages and everything is really an integral part of the radio service. But getting a list of these Q signals is really helpful if a CW net is, if you think that would be something for you. The digital traffic net is interesting. This is an invite, kind of an invite only, and it's just primarily a function of how the network is set up. There's a hub station, and the hub station is programmed to accept a call from your station. So that's the invite part, right? So it would block any calls from other stations. So you just basically need to get on a list to be accepted into DTN. I like to use VARA HF, which is an inexpensive digital mode. It's pretty common. It uses WinLink. But it's really cool because you can check into the DTN anytime. It's an asynchronous net, and you can check in. You can get messages off of it. It's programmed that you'll get messages for your zip code and kind of like a ring of zip codes right around you. So you would handle messages for that area. So the DTN is pretty neat. It handles a lot of traffic. This is the network that probably handles the most traffic, and it's used for those wide area kind of transcontinental nets. So the DTN is, if you like digital modes, this would be a good mode to look into.
Does any part of that DTN use the internet?
I don't believe so. I could be wrong, but I don't believe so.
WECA is using WinLink for message handling for emergency traffic or events and stuff. And should been a couple of Steve came to of these training sessions on over Zoom, and generally it's delivered through email using the internet. But if you've got the right software and equipment, you can do it all over the air. So if there was another Hurricane Sandy or something of that nature, you can do it. You can get a WinLink message. Yeah, you can get the WinLink message right to the radio.
Right. Typically, you get out to a gateway and it goes internet.
Yeah.
Typically, but unless it's set up different.
Yeah, I have mine to do over HF. So.
Right, but you're still going to a gateway someplace.
Oh, you're saying on that end? You're saying on the hub station?
Well, you post a message out there, you're gonna have to go to a gateway in RF, right?
Okay.
Because I'm sure you can in California, unless it's a good day.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to look into that for you. But the hub station is a standard station. It's a little upstate. I only connect to one station.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah. I'm not doing email over HF. I'm connecting to a known hub station on either 40 or 80 meters.
yeah, they could be going to another gateway. They can reach and hop across the country without going to the internet. But if they typically went to a gateway, they would go out through the internet to a gateway close to the destination site. I believe that's the way it works.
Good. Well, I like your question, and that's my thing to learn today. So thank you. And what happens to the message afterwards?
And I kind of bring that up because I've been fooling around with post office, HF,
Okay.
which a post office is a destination and both parties have to be able to hit it where you get their mail.
Okay.
There's no relay or anything like that. I understand.
Interesting. Good. Well, I'll get back to you on that. So hopefully you've gotten a little excited. You're thinking about that this might be for you. The Hudson Valley Net's a great place to start. I see people shaking their heads, so some people have joined, heard of this or joined it. It uses the Mount Beacon Club's infrastructure on Mount Beacon, and it's every day at 7:30, and it's a great spot to start listening. I know there's 20 to 30 check-ins every night. Pretty reliable number of pieces of traffic get handled. You can just listen to the traffic get handled back and forth. You can listen to the way it goes. You can listen to the procedure of how the net control station handles the check-ins, the liaisons, the traffic, and it's pretty easy to hear. They have a great system. So I'd recommend if you're thinking about this, or if you're interested, this would be a great place to go, and just Googling Hudson Valley Net will get you their website. The Empire Slow Speed Net is a good one for New York State. If you have HF, usually 80 in the winter and 40 in the summer, you should be no problem able to listen to this. The Empire Slow Speed Net is good for handling messages within New York State. And then they also do have liaison stations that can go out to the regional nets. So you can get messages out past New York State. Everybody's around 10 to 13 words per minute. and everybody's really willing to slow down and do repeats and very welcoming. So I would recommend, if you like CW, to check that out. That's a good one. And then maybe you don't have an HF radio, or your handheld can't hit the Mount Beacon repeater. You could check out the virtual training net. This is a relatively new event, and it's held weekly on Zoom. And I just took the little blurb off of the NTS2 website, but it's a Zoom traffic net, and it's pretty neat. And it's designed to help people learn about the patterns and the cadence of checking in, bringing traffic, passing traffic, and they will take messages and put them into the traffic system. So it's not like, it might be a different mode, and some purists might say, oh, that's not a traffic net, but this is part of a project called NTS 2.0, which is trying to bring the traffic system to more people, and I think this is a pretty neat idea. So they will take messages and put them into the system for you. So that's a cool net. And then you've also got the Radiogram Portal. So some of you might, when I stop talking, when I'm done, and we start maybe writing a couple radiograms, you might want to take that radiogram home and put it into the Radiogram Portal. Now, the Radiogram Portal is really cool. It's also part of this NTS2 project, and it's an online interface where you can type out a message, and you put in the addressee, who it goes to, and then you check it over and stuff, and you hit send, and it goes to the back end of this website, and people can pick up this message. Operators can pick up this message, put it into the system for you. So it's a really neat. It's actually very popular, but it's a great way to get, if you don't have a radio, or again, like your radio can't connect to, you can't hit the Mount Beacon machine. It's a great way to get into traffic handling. You can't receive messages back. I mean, you'd receive messages maybe through the mail or a phone call if you asked for a reply. But this is really cool, and I can answer questions about that in a little bit. So people who do traffic handling, if you get really into it, there's some awards and recognitions you can get into. This is a page in QST magazine. It's towards the back. This is the Public Service Honor Roll, and if you earn particular points, like checking into a net is a point, and there's like some kind of guidelines about what you can count towards this. Originating messages, handling messages, delivering messages are all worth various points. And so you can get recognized. A lot of people, this is one of the drivers. Some people are really into that. So you could do that. Everybody likes a good certificate, so there's lots of certificates, right? So I picked the first radiogram certificate because that's kind of a special one. But these would be issued by the net manager of whatever net you decided to start joining. So there's some examples. You could be an official relay station, if you've gotten in with an Aries response. They have a challenge coin, which is I think it's 2 years, 48 consecutive months on the Public Service Honor Roll. So there's some good certificates. There's a neat game you could play, and if you don't have a radio, you could, and again, you can't hit the Mount Beacon machine. You could even play this game through the Radiogram Portal if you wanted to. So the treasure hunt is really cool. It lasts for 2 months, and again, I should probably have started off this slide with the NTS letter. If what I'm talking about today is interesting to you, you should definitely go to the ARRL website and subscribe to the NTS letter. It just has updates and news and stuff like that. But the treasure hunt, the first question is published in that. And so the questions are usually related to traffic handling or amateur radio. And so you find the answer and you send a radiogram to that station. And in a few days, they get back to you with if it's correct, with the next, if your answer is correct, with the next clue and who to send it to. So you could very well use the Radiogram Portal if you didn't have the equipment to connect. But that's pretty fun, and there's usually 4 or 5 questions. That's a great way. It's one of the strategies to bulk up the traffic through the system. Field day. It was great to hear everybody talking about getting ready for field day. There's a strong incentive to bring the NTS to your field day with bonus points. All right, so you got 100 bonus points for a formal message to the section manager, and then 10 points up to 100 for each message coming out of your field day. So you could make a schedule to an operator off-site, or you could connect directly to a known net. And you'd probably want to schedule that with them ahead of time, so you didn't dump 11 messages right on their traffic net without them knowing. But that's a nice thing if you're into the points for field day. All right, so I'm going to get into the next part, which is going to be kind of a little wrapping up, and hopefully I brought a stack of radiograms, so hopefully everybody will be interested in maybe writing one. Yes.
There's also the Southern District net on record, which is a wide coverage.
Oh, great.
Every night, 9:30, the same way. They have different net control.
Great.
Then sometimes liaison, I hear other areas. Nipon
Okay.
is a net.
Yeah.
I think it's New York Phone or something where they get the HF from. But I did want to mention the Southern District. That's been wrong one.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Well,
And I'm up north, I'm a little farther north, so I don't actually join that one. So that wasn't on the tip of my head. So I appreciate you mentioning that one, because you're right. That is a good one for here.
county and
Yeah.
they're a big coverage.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So a couple things. Being concise with a radiogram is really important. So we try to go for 25 words or word groups or less. And then I wrote out some of the basics for characters. The idea is to think about either if there was a poor phone connection or over CW, you want to make sure that the message gets through. So you find a lot of the punctuation you just actually write out, but those are some unusual ones. X is the period, R is a decimal or a dot in an email, and you spell out at sign. And then 73 or 88 is pretty much always the last word group, but for whatever it's worth, it's considered bad form to put a period right before that. So you always want to end with 73, but you never put a period before it. So
I've heard, because I listened to that traffic net,
yeah,
and usually at the end of the radiogram, the person, reading the text will say like break or end no more.
yes,
Indicate the absolute
right,
end of the piece of traffic.
right. Because if they have more than one, they would say end one to follow, right? And just to make sure. But yeah, that's right. End no more is a common at the end.
I think also they give a count.
Yes.
If there's a question over, like the assistant
Yep.
control to confirm,
Right.
something like that.
To make sure they didn't lose a word group or whatever. Yeah. Actually, I think it's just a couple here. My last slide is a picture of the radiogram, and you'll see where that fits in. You can include handling instructions. So many times these are left out. The reason they're left out is because they can add a burden onto the delivering station. So if you're not sure, you could leave those out, but HX is the handling instructions, and then the letter that comes after that is the actual instructions, and you can have more than one instruction, all right? But you can have, E is a common one to get a reply back. Like if you want to see how, you know, your cousin in Indiana is doing and you want a message back, you would do HXE, and then when they get the message delivered to them, the delivering ham would say, I'm ready to take your message back, and they would originate a message back for you. C is one that's overused a lot, and it creates a real burden. So I would kind of like hold off on that one. That's if you kind of really wanted to know that it got delivered, when exactly. You know, it's kind of like a timestamp. So radiograms can be coded into, you know, we're mostly talking about general purpose, right? But we're all just basically practicing for if there is an emergency, right? If there's a natural disaster, you know, recently, I think it was about a year ago in North Carolina, the flooding in North Carolina, the traffic system did come into play with people getting messages in and out of the disaster area. Which was really interesting that all the practice pays off for people in disasters. So, you know, we use welfare, emergency management, safe and well, general purpose. These are all sort of classifications of the different messages. But again, with brevity and clarity, there's these things called numbered radiograms, and they save time. So for example, if I send 46, the delivering station will say, happy birthday. And so there's a list of these. So I just gave you 46 as an example. You might do 46 and all the best or something. But that's a lot easier than happy birthday, blah, 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 right? It's just a lot clearer. So there are numbered radiograms, and if you kind of get into this and you get a little more experience, you'll come across those. There's a lot of them. They're particularly helpful for, like, for example, HXC. Instead of writing out, I delivered the message to blah, 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 on blah, 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 it's just a number and then the station and the time, you know, and it's like 5 character groups or something like that. So it's a lot easier. Booking messages is kind of fun. This is when you either send multiple messages to the same person or you send the same message to multiple people. And it's, again, a way to save time. But I would say that's in the more maybe intermediate as you get into it a little bit. But this might be if you do get onto a net and you hear them talking about a book of, and then followed by a number, you know what this is. It's a group of messages. All right.
Is there something to messages ARL, like a series?
Yeah.
A number?
Yep.
Abbreviation of what the subject is?
Yep. That's 46 is birthday.
Right.
Yep. So this is what one of these radiograms looks like. You notice it's kind of like what I started with. And I'm going to be done talking in a minute or two. I'm going to give you a sample a radiogram, and if you're interested, you can, you know, if you think of somebody that you'd like to send a message to, we'll talk about how you can fill it out. If you're not handling the message to the traffic system, you probably would leave the preamble out, but the preamble is some of the details about the message. So it starts off with the number. Each traffic station keeps an accurate record of the messages they've sent, and they're numbered. It's a good practice that most stations start over every year. Then you've got the precedence, which is whether it's emergency, routine. You know, I've never sent an emergency message, or a welfare message. I only send routine messages, so I've put an R there. The next one, you know what, why don't I hand these out actually while I'm talking about it, and you can look along and we'll sort of wrap this, see if we wrap this up here. You want to just maybe take one and pass it along? And I got some pens too, so I'm going to just go through this briefly and then. So if you were going to take this message and send it, you would put your own station of origin, and then you got the check number. The check number is how many words or word groups are in the message. All right. The place of origin is wherever the message comes from. The time filed is usually left blank, and then there's the date. All right. Then you got the address. That's the name, and if it's a ham, the call sign. These days we add under the address email usually, or phone number. The 25 words or character groups or less goes in the message. It's good practice to write in capital letters, so there's no confusion on, if a script or handwriting or something like that. And then the signature is your name and call sign, or just your name.
Those pads used to be available through the internet.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it, something that sounds kind of interesting that either, you kind of remember about, or maybe you didn't know about and you wanted to get into. It's a really neat activity. And I think that the thing that I was the most, what's the right word? Not surprised, but happy to learn was that the traffic handling community is a really tight-knit group, and I've made some really good friends that I've never actually met face to face yet, but really nice people that I look forward to talking to as often as possible, as sometimes as even as every night. So it developed into some friendships outside of this traffic system as well, which is really cool. So, and it's helping me build my skills along the way. So I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to circulate around. I have some pens. I figured this amount of time, 5-10 minutes, if you have somebody in mind to write out a message, I'm happy to handle it for you. If you wanted to take the message with you and handle it from your own station or put it into the Radiogram Portal, I could help you get a plan for that as well. All right. So any questions on the radiograms? Let's bring it back to that. I guess the first thing is a first good clue is you want to send a radiogram to somebody who you know pretty well. Like a family member, or a good place to start also is a fellow ham. They'll be sort of cued into this a little better, because it's funny, some people don't really understand what this is, and it could be, how'd you get my number, how'd you get my address, something like that. So it's best to pick somebody that you kind of know, right? The number really is more for if, say a message never went through and someone would come back to you and say, what was the details of your message number 12 or whatever. So you'd look back in your records for that year and say, oh, number 12 was to so-and-so. I sent it to this net. Like when you send the messages, you're supposed to mark down, who took it, what net it went to, things like that. So you can kind of trace back the message's path. So you can send one to anyone in America, and then we get into, if your question is international, there's some countries where that they could take third-party traffic, and some countries can't. So, but yeah, you can send one to anybody in America, and like on the Radiogram Portal that I told you about, a lot of those messages are non-ham to non-ham. That's been a great place for the non-ham public to start getting into the messages. So if you see this, this has the lines. Each of these lines is a number. So this one had 20, check at 23. So you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 1, 2, 3. And again, you see no X in front of the 73. But they might, what you also might be thinking of is the check-ins to the net. So that would be different than the, and I see, you know, it could be, they do use check as well for the message, but check-ins for the net would also be something you would hear. Great, well, I hope everybody found at least something out of this. I appreciate being asked to come and share some experience about something I like a lot. So, yeah, thank you.